Hey, Phil Steele here. This video is an update for the Lightroom Classic 11.4 release. There are only a couple of small changes worth noting in this release, but I consider them so important they're worth a video. Now, if you haven't yet watched my video about the major changes that came out in Lightroom Classic 11, you might want to watch that video first, because this video notes a small but very important improvement to one of those features, and then we'll also show you a new feature that we've been begging for basically since Lightroom version 1 a decade ago. So let's get to it. First, we'll look at some improvements to the new masking tools that were introduced in Lightroom Classic 11. I'm going to start with this photo, and I'm going to make a mask on it. I'm going to open the masking tools right here, and I'm going to select the sky to create a mask of just the sky so I can modify the sky without affecting any other parts of the photo. And you can see it automatically selected it with the new AI masking features that we talked about in the previous update. Now, just to make some changes to the sky so we can see what's going on, I'm going to take this dramatic sky and make it a little more dramatic. I'll bring the exposure down. Let's see, I'll push the clarity up to heighten the contrast. Dehaze usually helps make skies more dramatic. Goes a little too far if I push it too far. You notice it's also taking on a blue color cast the more I do that. Usually if you darken things, they take on a color cast. So we'll take that out by reducing the saturation to get it back to a more believable gray looking sky. So that looks a lot more dramatic. Now the first change I want to point out is the new amount slider here in the masking panel, and you can control the currently selected mask. You can see right now I'm working with this mask that I just created over here on the sky. I can change the amount that this is affecting the photo. If I take it all the way down, that mask is not affecting it at all. If I push it all the way up, it goes from 0 to 200. It starts out at 100 at the midpoint, which is the changes that I made. If I push it up to 200, it's doubling the changes that I made. If I take it to 0, it's not showing the changes at all. So this amount slider is terrific. This is a great thing to have that gives you control. Instead of going in and tweaking every little slider, you may have made a lot of adjustments here in this panel. Instead of tweaking every little one to try to make it stronger or less, now you can just look at it and go, well, I like the effect, but I just like a little less of that effect, or I'd like a little more of that effect. Now the second improvement I want to show you relates to the automatic sync function, which allows you to replicate changes that you made to one photo across other photos. And we looked at this before in the previous update video and saw that it had some quirks and problems, and they've improved it since then. Now there are two different ways you can apply changes in one photo to another. The simple sort of one-off method is, while I have this photo selected, I could go to Settings, and I could say copy the settings from this photo. And in this case, I'm going to copy the masking settings because that's what I just changed. I'm not worried about anything else. And then I could select a different photo. I'm going to pick the second one here. And I could go to Settings, and I could say Paste Settings. And you can see it worked. It took the sky in the second photo and it pasted those settings. And the beautiful thing, this is the AI sky selection mask. It figured out the subject is different in this photo. It's a different tree in a different place. The ground and the horizon might be in a different place. But it figured all that out. It said, oh, you're trying to change the sky. I'll just change the sky. This is the beauty of these new AI masking tools. Now, but what if I wanted to apply that kind of change to all the photos in this series all at once, instead of doing one at a time with copy and paste? So I'm just going to undo this one real quick by resetting the photo that I'm on back to its original state. So now we still have the first one with the dramatic sky that I did, and we have the other four in this series that are not modified yet. Now, if I want to modify all of these all at once to match that first photo, all I have to do is start with the first one selected that I want to use as the source of the changes. Then I'm going to shift click on the last one in the range so that they're all selected, but you can see the first one is a little brighter. That means it's the most selected. So it's the source and the others are the target of the changes. So now that they're all selected, I can click on Sync. And in this case, I'm only going to sync the mask because that's the only change I made that I want to bring over. If I had other changes, I could click more stuff, but we're just working with the mask. And I'm going to say Synchronize. And you can watch these little thumbnails down here and you'll see the change come in. Boom. So it just brought that change to the sky, even though all of these are different shapes. They have different subjects. The sky is a different shape on each of them. It figured all that out. It's brilliant. And it applied the changes just to the sky in all of these photos. And you'll notice it didn't have the problem that we saw in the previous video. When they released this feature, I would have had to go through and click on each one of these individually and tell it, yes, go ahead and apply the update. And then the next one, yes, go ahead and apply the update. Now they fixed that so it just automatically does it. Doesn't matter whether it's 1 or 100, it just automatically does it. That's the way the feature should have worked in the first place, and it took them a while to get it straightened out. So that's a huge improvement. And by the way, if I thought maybe on one of these photos, like maybe this last one, the effect is too strong and I wanted to reduce it, well, I can use the new amount slider to do it. But you'll see the amount slider is grayed out. That's because the mask isn't currently selected. So if I just go select the mask, I'm on the 5th photo here, the last one. Now I've got the amount slider and I can say on this photo, I wanted to have a little less of that effect. So this is great because it means you're not stuck with the strength of the change you made to the mask on your original source photo. After applying it to the others, you can go into the others and use that amount slider to adjust it on each photo if necessary. All right, now we're back on the first photo, and I want to show you an important improvement to the develop presets. So let's look over here in the preset panel and find one that we like the look of on this photo. And the presets I'm looking through here are a great set by Contrastly. It's my favorite set, and I'll put a link to them below this video if you want to get these. And I'm looking through this set called Duotones, and I love the duotones for things like this sort of abstract landscape photos. So I think today I kind of like the look of this yellow, so I'm going to click on this one to apply it. And now you'll see something new. There is an amount slider up here for the presets. Now this is what we've been begging for since Lightroom version 1. By reducing this, you can reduce the amount that that preset is affecting the image, or by pushing it up, you can increase it. It starts out at 100, which is the preset at its normal strength. If you push it up to 200, you're doubling the effect. And if you take it down to 0, you're reducing the effect. Now, I don't know why it's taken so long for Adobe to implement an amount slider, especially because for many years there's been a third-party plugin that you could buy and install called the OPAL opacity slider to give you exactly this capability. Now, if some individual program out there could code this up many years ago, I don't know why it took Adobe's huge team of programmers a whole decade to get around to this extremely urgently needed feature. But I'm sure glad they have. And by the way, if you're using an older standalone version of Lightroom that doesn't have this new feature, you can still buy that OPAL slider plugin, which I've been using up until this week, but now I don't need it anymore. I'll put a link to it down below because I know I have a lot of subscribers using older non-subscription versions of Lightroom. Now let me point out an interesting thing about this preset amount slider. Look what happens if I take it all the way down to 0. Now, that did not return my photo to its full color original state. In other words, this is not an opacity slider like you would see in Photoshop. This is not a separate layer where you're just reducing the opacity. Presets don't work that way. The way presets work is by adjusting all these little sliders in Lightroom that you could manually adjust over here by hand. But some changes that you can make in Lightroom are not based on variable sliders like this. There might be some changes that are just a binary off or on change that was made to this photo. So in this case, when I take it down to 0, all the color type effects go away, but you can see it is not the full color original. It's sort of a black and white photo now, which tells me that one of the changes that this preset applied was something like convert this to monochrome. That's just a binary on or off command. It's either monochrome or it's not. And so the slider can't adjust that because that's not a variable thing based on one of these little sliders over in the right column that you can adjust. So that's an important limitation to understand to the amount slider. You might find some presets where the amount slider is entirely disabled because that preset didn't use any changes that were based on variable slider functions. Maybe it only used these binary on or off kind of changes. And then some like this one are kind of in between where the slider can affect some components of the change, but not all components of the change. But none of that detracts from the fact that having this amount slider up here is a huge improvement to Lightroom. It literally makes thousands of presets that I have usable to me for the first time, and they weren't really usable in the past because I couldn't control their intensity. And now this huge library of presets that I have suddenly is all useful. Now, once again, the presets that I'm using here are a set from Contrastly, the ones I use the most, and I love them, and I'll put a link to that down below. And by the way, if you don't yet have my full course, Lightroom Made Easy, you can get it from the link below this video. This is a complete course containing 35 videos, more than 7 hours of instruction, and it takes you all the way through, from the basics of Lightroom to the most advanced topics. It's the only Lightroom course you'll need, and it's my most popular training course by far. Alright, that's it. I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope you have as much fun as I'm having playing with these new tools.